Hello, everybody. My guest today is my good friend, Joe Myers. Joe is part of my breakfast group. If you remember the conversations I've had with Jim Wither and Jim Berkner, that's part of the same group. I met Joe a couple of years ago when I moved into Bastrop County. We spend basically every Wednesday morning together. Have gotten to know him a little bit through that. In this conversation, we cover pretty much the entirety of Joe's life, starting in deep South Texas in a place called Jourdanton. We talked about his early life playing every sport he could find to play. He played all three sports in college, played track, basketball, and football. We talked about his time in the Air Force Reserve, his job out of the Air Force in meat packing. He went to pharmaceutical drug sales with Johnson & Johnson and ultimately found his way into real estate. We cover a lot of ground, but have really appreciated getting to know Joe and his wisdom. We share a lot of experiences in common professionally, and then we talked about when it came time to hang the boots up and retire 5 years ago, what that process was like. But hope you'll enjoy this conversation with my good friend, Joe Myers. There is, select ball, select baseball, where you're on a travel team. That starts in coach pitch.
Yeah.
Select coach pitch. That feels too early for that.
I agree with that.
It feels just as wrong as saying, let's go play this sport and not keep score.
Yeah.
Because you got to have that too.
Sure.
You listed football you played, track, and basketball you played. I'm guessing you played those because the seasons didn't overlap that much.
That's correct.
No baseball in there.
We, of course, we had two coaches in high school.
For every sport.
Every sport. They taught or coached all three sports.
Right.
But we had our choice of either baseball or track. We couldn't do both.
Oh, I see.
And the baseball field was halfway to Pleasanton, which is Pleasanton and Jourdanton 4 miles apart. So baseball field was 2 miles away. Track course right there at school. And I've worked all my life. But every evening after school, I worked at a dairy, which I could walk to the dairy from school. And so baseball was out for me. I love track. Because track, and I could just jog right on over to the dairy.
So logistics kept you from being a baseball player.
Yeah.
I see.
And so, and I played some. I'm left-handed, so I was first baseman.
Mm-hmm.
Tall.
6'4",
could catch
lefty
the ball.
is
Yeah.
You're shoo-in for first base.
Yeah. And I was good the first half of the league because I bunted all the time because I was fast.
Yeah, and if you're a lefty, you're already halfway to first.
And so, but then the latter part of the season, everybody knew I was going to bunt. That didn't work so good.
Right, yeah. Yeah. They catch on to you after a while.
Yeah.
What year did you graduate high school?
1954.
1954. All right, so there's a lot of ground we can ultimately cover, but you are where are you in a family of 6 kids?
Got a sister that's a year older, and then me, then brother, sister.
You're the oldest boy.
Yes.
Did that carry with it responsibility for brothers?
Yes.
Yeah, talk about that a little.
Well, my mother was a teacher. Retired at 37 years as a teacher. And there was things to do around the house. Big old strong me. I washed the dishes and dried the dishes just like all the rest of them. And that's the responsibility that I had. Responsibility was to make sure that Murray and Charlie did their jobs. That was my job.
How'd they like that you were responsible? I know. Yeah, I've got a boy that's 9 and a boy that's 6. And there's nothing the boy that's 6 hates more than when his brother is in charge of a chore.
That's right. They get used to it, though.
Oh, do they?
Oh, yeah.
Good to know.
And Mother always said to us, all 6 of us, when you come to the table to eat, you will have washed your hands, washed your face, and combed your hair.
Combed your hair?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And if you hadn't done any of those three, get up, leave the table, go do what you're supposed to do. To this day, it's interesting how that happens. Before I go eat, wash my hands, wash my face, comb my hair.
Make sure your hair is done.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So I have a similar thing from my childhood where my grandma, my dad's mom, we called her B. Her name was Billy, but she didn't want to be grandma. She wanted to just be B. She would not tolerate you coming to the table without a shirt on or with a hat on. And so to this day, I'm a little more relaxed on the shirt thing. But if there's a hat on at the table, you got to take your hat off.
Yeah, we were like that.
Yeah.
Mom would not allow us to the table without a shirt, with our hat on. Take that cap or hat off.
Yeah.
Go put it in your room.
When you're in a restaurant and you see somebody with a hat on, does it catch your attention?
Mm-hmm.
Me too.
Well, I've got my youngest brother, Charlie. Seldom ever takes his hat off.
Huh. So, despite his mom.
Yeah.
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 How did
He's the baby of the boys, so he got away with it.
He got away with it. Yeah, he had the way paved for him.
Yeah.
How did your family settle in Jordanton to begin with? You say Jordanton.
Yeah, it's Jordanton.
Jordanton.
Yeah.
But it's spelled Jour, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But everybody there pronounces it Jordanton.
Gotcha. Fair enough.
What was the question?
How did your family settle in Jordanton?
How did we get there?
Yeah. Your mom was a teacher. What'd your dad do?
My dad was a trucker.
Okay.
And he had a 1.5-ton Chevrolet truck. He hauled watermelons, cantaloupes, cattle, whatever. Mother was from Jordanton.
Okay.
And Daddy was originally from Chico, which is a small town right out of Fort Worth. How Daddy wound up in Jordanton, I don't know.
Yeah.
But Mother was there and went to college at Southwest Texas, or now
Texas
South
State.
Texas. Yeah, Texas State.
Yeah.
Got her degree there. But I guess because Mother lived there is how we wound up there.
Do you know how they met, your parents?
No, I don't.
Huh.
No.
Well, if your dad was a trucker and he hauled things like watermelons, cantaloupes, and cattle.
Anything anybody needed to haul.
Well, there's plenty of that. There's plenty of those three things in South Texas.
Yes.
So it would make sense that you'd end up in a place like Jordanton.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your wife's name is Stevie. Is that a given name?
Yes. Her name is Stevie K.
Stevie K. Spell Stevie.
Stevie.
V-I-E.
The joke she has, are you familiar with Shriner Institute?
No.
In Kerrville?
No. Oh, yes, I am. They were in our conference.
Yeah, I thought so. All-male school. Steve is all-state choir 2 years, junior and senior year. Well, at the end of her senior year, she got an offer from Shriner Institute, full scholarship to sing. And she always says, but Mother wouldn't let me go. As an all-male school.
As an all-male school. The name was a little confusing.
That's right.
Yeah, they needed a soprano.
They, I guess, thought she was a male.
Yeah.
Offered her a scholarship.
Yeah. That's funny. My sister's name is Davie, D-A-V-I-E.
Uh-huh.
And it was plagued with that confusion her entire life, too.
Yeah.
And also, my mom was a teacher, and my dad is a trucker.
Really?
We share that in common.
But darn.
Yes, sir. My dad's been with FedEx for 40-something years.
And I remember that. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, some similarities there. So how did you and Stevie meet? I don't think I've heard that story.
Well, it's an interesting story. Now, of course, I was in the real estate business, and they had multiple offices. She applied to get her license with me. I interviewed her in Portland. We at that time had a Portland office, and so I interviewed her and saw that she's a smart gal and could get along with people. So she had a personality. Said, sure, need to get your license and we'll get you trained and you can go to work as an agent. That's how we met.
Okay. When was that? Set that in the timeline for me.
That must have been like 75.
Okay. Portland. Like Portland, Oregon?
No, Portland, Texas.
There's a Portland,
just
Texas.
Over, yes, just
okay.
over the high bridge from Corpus
I
on
see.
181.
Okay.
So that's...
I'm learning that now, too. I didn't know there was a Portland, Texas.
Yeah, oh yeah, there's Portland and then Ingleside, Aransas Pass, Rockport.
Gotcha. So she came in to apply for a job. Did she get the job?
Yeah,
okay.
she got the job, got her license, did well at it, wound up as an assistant manager in the Portland office. And I had a partner at the time in the Portland office, and we opened an Ingleside office. So Phyllis, my partner, was running both of those offices. Stevie was her assistant. And then we got her up to speed, and then Stevie took over management of the Ingleside office.
Okay. So how long into her professional tenure, this, you know, this is going to be an interrogation.
It's okay.
How long into her professional tenure did it go from business relationship to, oh, I might have some interest in this?
Yeah.
This person.
Oh, 5 or 6 years.
Okay, so you worked together for a while.
Oh yeah. In fact, when I got my divorce, my daughter, I've got 2 children, a son and a daughter. I got my divorce. Dara was just fixing to go to tech. And so Stevie and I started dating, and Dara said, Dad, don't you think you ought to spend more time getting to know her? And I said, well, you know, she's worked for me 7 years. I ought to know her pretty well. Oh, yeah, that's right. You know, she still protects me to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyhow, that's how it all happened. Stevie was divorced. She had been divorced 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
So she had 2 boys. And then I had a boy and a girl.
Gotcha.
My boy and girl were 6 years older than her kids. They're her oldest. So, you know, they were not together. My kids were practically grown when we got married.
Yeah. So how long have you been married now?
Only 44 years.
44 years. Okay. So we're going to jump around in the timeline, but that's fine. That's usually how these conversations go.
Okay.
I want to go back to high school. So you're in high school, you're playing 3 sports. You made the decision to go to college at some point. Why? At the time, you could have gone into a trade, but you chose to go into college.
Well, I went to Mississippi State on a football scholarship.
Okay.
Hurt my back. I transferred to Texas A&I in Kingsville on a basketball scholarship.
Okay.
Basketball was worse on my back than football.
Really?
Yeah. And so athletic director called me in one day and he said, I see you straining out there all the time. I know you went to state in track. So why don't you come out for track season? And if you can make our mile relay, I'll switch your scholarship over to track. I said, okay, yeah, I can do that. So I wound up, did well at track and captain of the team 2 years, my junior and senior year.
Okay. This is at A&I?
Yes.
Okay.
Making the mile relay was easy. We ran for time to decide who was going to be on the mile relay. And there was 10 of us. going to run. Top 4 is going to be on the mile relay for the Border Olympics, which was going to be our first track meet.
Say the Border Olympics?
Border Olympic, Laredo, Texas.
Okay.
And Coach positioned us where he thought we would finish best. Well, I was 10A. I was there's 2 guys in number 9, so I was 9A. I was a number 10 guy. But I'd only been working out for a month. The rest of those guys had been working out for 4, 5, 6 months. And I won the
You
quarter.
Finished first?
Yeah. Which meant I had to anchor the mile relay.
Yeah.
And we didn't know how good we were compared to anybody else. And I was always, I guess, a strong leader. I don't know how that happened, but I was a leader. And the other 3 guys decided, rather than to embarrass me in the mile relay, that whoever started running last dropped the baton. Then we're out of the race. They didn't tell me that. See, they didn't tell me that, and we won it.
And you won it.
So they didn't have a reason to drop the baton. And they never told me that until we were going home that night. And George Brown, who was the second quarter miler, he and I, George was always a yard or so behind me. We were close. And George said, I think I need to tell you something, Joe. I said, all right. Well, we decided before we left school that whoever ran last was going to drop the baton so that we wouldn't embarrass you. You wouldn't have to running last. I said, I didn't know that.
I don't understand. Why would they drop the baton to keep from embarrassing you?
So that I wouldn't have to run last.
And lose? They assumed you were going to lose?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They assumed that they were going to be so far behind I couldn't catch up.
I see.
And we were far behind. I was 4th when I got the baton, but managed to pull it off. But anyhow, that's a cute story.
Yeah.
From the way we started out.
So you were, what'd you call them? Border Games? Border Olympics?
Border Olympics.
Border Olympic mile relay champions?
Yeah.
That's impressive.
College.
In college.
There was high school, college, university.
I gotcha. Okay.
So, yeah.
What were the other guys' names? Do you remember? You mentioned the one of them.
George Brown.
George Brown.
Ran the second, he ran the 3rd leg.
Okay.
Andy White ran the 2nd leg. Who ran that 1st leg?
You still keep in touch with any of those guys?
Patrick.
Oh, you remember the name?
Yeah. Patrick, I keep in touch, and he's a doctor in Austin.
Huh.
I keep in touch with him. George has passed away. Andy lives in Bernie. I see Andy occasionally.
Yeah.
Andy was a good half miler, and so was George Brown. But they were good quarter milers also. So that was our mile relay. But I anchored the mile relay. I anchored the sprint relay, and I ran the 220 and the 440.
You did mile and sprint.
Did the mile relay, yes.
Yeah.
And then the sprint relay, yes.
Oh, I see. Those are kind of 2 different events for a track athlete, are they not?
Well, not really.
Not when you're 6'4" and athletic.
Well, that's right. I was blessed with a lot of speed. Not anything I accomplished.
Yeah, I was
blessed with that.
I get that.
And
you're not tooting your own horn. It's okay.
No,
you're safe.
So, we did the same thing in the sprint relay. The next day, we ran, and the top 4 are going to be on the sprint relay in that order. Whoever finished first is going to anchor, throwing down the line. And I won that. And there was a kid from Catula, fast kid, but he was a freshman. I was a junior then. And so He pushed me. It was always a close race. Anyhow, his senior year, he ran a 9.6.
Fast.
That's real fast. I never did break 10 flat. I could get to 10 flat. I just couldn't get past it. I'd be 10-1, 10 flat. I never could get to 9.9.
Yeah, that's quick. When I was in high school, all I wanted was to run a 4.4 because the guys that I knew that were super, super fast, they all could run a 4.4. That was the thing then. And I could run a 4.5, but I could not run a 4.4. Yeah, I know what
It's
that's
strange
like.
how that works.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't have any problem with that, of course, on the sprint relay, but I had a running start there. So
right.
But no, I never could get 9.9.
You graduated college?
Yeah.
What was your degree in?
Business administration.
In business administration.
Got a good story on that.
You came prepared with stories. That's a great guest. That's a great guest move. I don't have to do anything. You can just tell all the stories you want to.
Well, let's see, where do I start? Well, we're talking about the
graduating college, business administration degree.
I got on probation at the end of my sophomore year, which meant if I didn't get off of probation that next semester, I'm out of school because I can't go to school on my own. We didn't have any money. And
you remember where you got on probation?
I got on probation because I would not go to class and never opened a book, didn't study.
Yeah. We called that SCO-PRO, scholastic
That's
probation.
Correct. That's what it was, scholastic probation. But anyhow, I got on scholastic probation, and the next semester I turned in 5 A's. But I went to class every day. I did my homework. I studied. I did the things students do instead of, like high school. I never did any of that. I was always the big time athlete.
That's right.
They'll push me through. Yeah. I knew that. But that isn't how it was in college. But anyhow, and that was so easy. I just kept doing that. So my junior and senior year, my grades were fine. The freshman and sophomore were shaky, all D's, C's, and F's. But your senior year at A&I, we had to go before, the men had to go before the dean of men for an interview. And he was looking at my transcript, and he looked at me and he, Joe, did you get married at the end of your sophomore year? I said, no, I got on scholastic probation. He said, well, you certainly turned it around, didn't you? I said, yeah, I tried going to class and listening and stuff like that. It worked.
Imagine that. Yeah.
And he laughed, and I laughed. I thought that was funny. Did you get married at the end of your sophomore year?
I know exactly what you're talking about, though. When you're an athlete and when you know everybody in the school, you know where the angles are.
Right.
You know how to do the minimal effective dose of something to get by. Yeah. I switched high schools as a sophomore and went to a place where I knew nobody. And the people I was interested in, the girl I was interested in, the friend group I was interested in being a part of, they were all good students. And it was the thing that I needed to just put in a little bit of effort and realize, I can actually do that part of it too.
Yeah. That was the fun part to me, was my last 2 years. But I did it like at A&I was small enough to where I knew practically everybody in school. Practically everybody knew me. I was, one of the taller guys, so I stood out. And that's another story. Let me tell you a story about when I was a junior in high school. I was getting a haircut, and my barber said to me, Joe, I want to talk to you about something. I said, okay. He said, you don't know how many of these young boys come in here and say, I want a haircut just like Joe Myers. And he said, you're their idol. And I don't know if you know that. I said, no, I had no idea. He said, well, that carries a big responsibility, Joe. don't ever smoke, don't ever drink, don't ever get in line because you're an example. Whatever you do, these young kids think that's the thing to do.
Mm.
And that really hit home with me. Really hit home.
What a favor he did you.
Yes, he did.
How old were you when that happened? Do you remember?
I was 7th or 8th grade, I guess.
Okay, you were young then.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
I don't think I really recognized the impact of people watching you and learning from your experience until I had kids. I never would have come to that realization as a high schooler or college athlete. You're very selfish when you're that young.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That really did. That hit home, and I've always carried that with me.
Yeah.
As a result, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink. And a lot of the guys that give me heck because I wouldn't, I said, I can't afford it. That costs money.
Yeah. That's a good default. Right. I think the thing that kept me from smoking or drinking in college was I was a relief pitcher. I never knew when I was going to play, and I couldn't play hungover. So you can't party when you might pitch the next day. You got to be able to perform.
Yeah.
What kept me out of it then, for sure. So you graduated with a degree in business. How soon thereafter did you go into real estate? Because your whole career was real estate, was it not?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Another story.
Let's go.
When I got out of college, when I graduated, came home, Mom said, Joe, Miss Dare said, as soon as you get home, you come see her. Well, Miss Dare was chairman of the draft board. And so I said, well, okay, I'll be over there first thing in the morning. So I went over there, and she said, Joe, do you know John Burkholder? And from Charlotte. And I said, yes, I do. John and I went to college together at A&I. She said, well, he went in the service yesterday. You are next on the list. I said, how much time do I have, Ms. Dare? And she said, well, I don't know. I don't have your notice now. So, I guess you have today. I said, I'm leaving here right now, and I'm going to San Antonio, and I'm going to join some reserve. She said, well, you let me know as soon as you do that. I said, okay. This was in 1958. 58. And I had a 49 Plymouth. So I got in that 49 Plymouth, and to San Antonio I went, which at that time was a trip, 32 miles. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and as I'm coming into San Antonio, Loop 13 was the outside loop at that time. And there's a sign that said Brooke Air Force Base. Boom, boy, I turned and went right into Brooke Air Force Base and talked to the recruiter, and I said, I want to join the Air Force Reserve. What have you got available? He said, well, it depends on how you do on the test. First off, I've got to give you the test. And I said, okay. Just out of college, I didn't have any trouble with their 8th grade test.
Uh-huh.
So anyhow, he said, oh, you did well. You have your choice of what you want to do. I said, well, what we'd already talked about tech school is what the next step that I'd go to tech school. What's the earliest tech school you have starting? And he looked at me and he said, you fixing to be drafted? I said, yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
I'm next on the list.
He was on to you.
He said, you just relax. I will, as soon as we get you signed up, I will call your draft board and I will let whoever there know that you've joined the Air Force Reserve. I said, okay, so you just relax. I said, okay. And he said, I have a tech school starting in 3 weeks, and it's special vehicle repair. Do you know anything about vehicles? And I said, well, yeah, I worked at a filling station every Saturday and Sunday for 4 years. So I know something about looking up at the bottom of a vehicle.
Yeah.
He said, well, no, I'm talking about cranes, fire trucks, this sort of equipment. That's special vehicle. I said, oh, no. I don't know anything about that. He said, well, that's the earliest school I have. I said, I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll learn.
So I did. And I was in there with, there was probably 25 of us in that class. And 8 of them were attorneys. So they were all doing the same thing as me, just getting into the reserve rather than going into the Army for 4 years.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that because the basic was, this is how you change a tire on a car,
Uh-huh.
and here's the muffler and all that. Then it came time to get under the car. Of course, I was under there. I'd been under a car many times, greasing them. So this attorney, and he was about maybe 5 feet tall. He said, Myers, do you know anything about this stuff? I said, well, yeah. Why? He said, we've never owned a car, and I've never been under a car, and I don't know one thing about what this is. I said, really? He said, yeah, I'm from Allentown, Pennsylvania. My dad's an attorney. I'm an attorney. We don't own a car. Everywhere we go is in a taxi. And I said, well, I'll be darned. Sure, I can tell you, what's this? What's this? And so we became big buddies. So
you were the seasoned veteran. Yeah.
And so once I got through with my tech school and back to Brooke Air Force Base, I started looking for jobs then in San Antonio and went to work for Swift and Company, which was the world's largest meat packer.
Meat packer.
And I sold meat for them. I had a route for 2 years and then managed the Corpus Christi unit. And that was quite an experience because 3 of those guys out of the 7 that worked for me had tried to manage that unit and failed.
Mm.
Well, they didn't want it to be successful, because they had failed at it. So I learned a whole lot about management there and trying to teach those guys how to sell because they didn't want to learn. And the way we sold then was completely different from the way they did it way back there. I even had one tell me that he's quitting. He'd been with Swift Company 37 years. He's quitting. He don't have to put up with this. You don't have to come to our sales meetings. And I said, Earl, I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's you go home right now. And you come back in the morning and let's talk about that. He said, I damn sure will. He left, went home. He came back the next morning with tears in his eyes. He said, I got mad. I want to apologize. I hope you don't fire me. I'll do what you told me to do, Joe. And
yeah.
Anyhow, he screwed up later on. So I managed 4 years.
4 years?
Yeah.
This is after the service?
Yeah. Okay. Got out of the service, went to work for Swift Company, sales for 2 years, and then management for 4. And at the end of that, my 4th year in management, Earl and I got crossways again. And so I had to straighten him out again. This time he was smart. He just walked off and then he came back later. But anyhow, my boss, who was in San Antonio, found out about it. And I found out who one of the other managers, everything that happened, he was telling what was going on. He was telling the boss in San Antonio. So Al called me and said, Al Grant, my manager, called me and said, I want to come down and talk to you. I said, okay. I had no idea what he wanted to talk to me about. And so he started off, he said, Joe, your unit's coming along. This unit hadn't made money since World War II, and you got it making a profit, and I want to congratulate you on that. And he said, I understand you had a conflict with Earl Witcher, pretty serious, and it was the second serious conflict you've had. I want you to fire Earl Witcher. I sat there for a minute and said, Al, I'm not going to fire Earl Witcher. Well, you know Earl Witcher is not a salesman. That's what he said. And you know he never was a salesman. I said, yes, sir. I know that. I said, what worries me, Al, is 37 years ago, someone in this organization in management should have figured that out and fired Earl Witcher. I'm not going to fire Earl Witcher. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to resign today. If you want to, you go fire Earl Witcher. But you find someone else. He said, Joe, you're going to be president of this company the way you're going in 15 years. I said, Al, 15 years, I may be Earl Witcher. So I'm not going to stick around. And so I left and went to work then for Johnson & Johnson, the Band-Aid people.
Yeah.
First aid, Red Cross, that sort of stuff. And again, this was a long time ago. J&J had just started, like all other drug companies, started marketing in the grocery stores. Theretofore, they were always in the drugstore. So we were marketing in the grocery stores. But my job was not to sell the grocery stores. My job was to motivate the wholesaler salespeople to sell our product to the retailer, who would then sell it to the consumer. And so my job with J&J more than anything else was to motivate the wholesaler sales force. So I was on a lot of sales meetings, and that started, gave away a lot of steak dinners. But anyhow, that's what I did. And my territory was South Texas, and that's a big area down there.
Yeah.
And there was only 13 of us in the 12-state area. So we were pretty scattered out. My boss was in Dallas, never came down to see me. But I always had good numbers. I was, again, blessed there because the guy I replaced was loafing. Yeah, he didn't make many. He didn't make any retail calls, which you didn't have to. But I felt like that wholesaler salesman is not going to do the job in a retail store that I could do.
Right.
I mean, they're order takers.
Yeah, they're selling wholesale. They're going for volume.
That's right. So I decided that I was going to call on every grocery store and every drugstore down there every 6 months. The bigger ones I'd call on once a month, but the little mom and pop, I still go in there, see them. And I can remember going into Butt's Drug in Weslaco, Texas, in the valley. And I walked in there and introduced myself, and he said, J&J, I didn't know you guys were still in business. I have never seen a J&J guy. I said, Mr. Butts, you're going to get to see me every 6 weeks. He said, I don't want to see you that often. I said, okay, let's do it every 6 months. He said, that's fine.
That'll work.
I'll see you every 6 months. So, and he didn't have a J&J product in that store. I said, okay. And then I said, can we talk about the business you're losing? Kind of took that approach. Because J&J had a 98% share market on their Band-Aid brand adhesive bandage.
Okay.
And he didn't have any. I said, you wonder why the grocery store is getting a lot of your business? because you don't have one J&J item in here. And that's all the grocery store carries, because they only carry the top seller, the top mover. They don't want something that's going to sit around for a year. They want something going to jump off that shelf. And you ought to think about that. I'm just telling you, you ought to think about it. He said, well, it kind of makes sense. I said, you're losing some business to the grocery store, aren't you? Oh, yeah, I am. I said, well, we can correct that. We can correct it with my line, I know. I said, why don't I send you 3 items to start out with? Of course, there was 3 of my best sellers. And I said, I'll come back in 6 months. We'll talk about more. Is that fair? He said, you won't be back in 6 months. And Mr. Butts was maybe 5 feet tall. I said, Mr. Butts, and at that time, 50-cent pieces you had. So I reached in my pocket and I pulled out a 50-cent piece, and I reached up on the top shelf and I put that 50-cent piece there. And I said, you see that 50 cents up there?
I'll be back for it.
If I'm not back in 6 months to pick up that 50-cent piece, you get yourself something and reach up there and get that 50-cent piece and go over there to your counter and order you a milkshake. But if I come back and it's less than 6 months, I'm going to get that 50-cent piece and you're going to buy me a milkshake.
Love that.
He said, you got a deal. I said, okay. And I took my card and I wrote the date on it. Here's my card. Here's the date. Going to be under the 50-cent piece. He said, okay. So it was like 5.5 months. And I walked in that store and I just opened the front door and he said, well, I'll be down. There's J&J.
That's great.
Said, yep. And I shook hands with him and I went right over and got that 50-cent piece. He says, come on. So we sat down at the counter there and I had my milkshake. He had a cup of coffee and just got along famously with him. He said, I've been checking on you. I said, oh, you have? He said, yeah, these guys around here drug us. Say that you don't ever have to worry about the J&J guy loading you. He's honest and he takes care of stuff. And, you know, if something's not moving, he pulls it out. He said, I like that. And I said, good. That is how I operate. He said, tell you what I'm going to do. You go over there and you work with Maria, or whatever her name is. She handles that section. You fill out a complete order of what I should have of J&J. And I'm going to put it over there. And I don't doubt you. It'll sell, and I know it will. I've just been pissed off because J&J never come see me. I said, well, you know what? You're not the only one down here. There's a lot of people that never saw a J&J guy. And I'll change that. And I promise you, every 6 months, I'm going to be by here or before. He said, well, I like that. Turned out to be one of my better customers, not in volume, but everything
just
we
a
had.
Relationship.
Everything I'd just walk in from then on. He said, get the hell over there and fix that up like it ought to be. And that's the way, not bragging, but that's the way most of my retailers and wholesaler was my last 4 years, because I worked for them for 6 years also.
Right.
I just walk in and they say, hey, J&J, what do you say? What's new? You know, because I always had something new I wanted to show them, tell them, so that they know if they get a call on it, that at least they knew about it. Get over there and fix me up. And I never checked with maybe 95% of the people that I worked with. I just went over and wrote what I thought they ought to have. They didn't have to sign anything. I knew which wholesaler they were using.
Yeah, because they weren't buying it from you; they were buying it from the wholesaler.
That's right. Yeah. And I sent my orders then to the wholesaler, and then they shipped it out.
How much over the course of those 6 months did you think about that business card? Did you remember it?
I never. That was never the top of my mind. I knew that I was going to be in Wesley Cove in 6 months, calling him Mr. Butts. I knew that.
I had a similar experience early in my sales career, because that's all I've ever done too, is selling. And it was David Reeves, who was the IT director at Texas Exes at the UT Alumni Association. And I went in to go visit with somebody there that I knew, and she introduced me to David. I was selling copiers and printers at the time. She said, he's the guy that's going to buy copiers and printers. I don't think we're looking for any anytime soon, but I'll introduce you to him. So I went in and met David, and he looked at me, and I was young and green, and he knew my product better than I knew my product. And he said, I'll tell you what, Tanner, if you're still here 6 months from now, then I'll meet with you, but I won't meet with you before then, because copier salesmen come and go. And my prediction is you'll be doing something else 6 months from now. And he is the reason I didn't quit in those first 6 months, because how dare you tell me that I won't be back here in 6 months, David? You can't tell me what I'm going to do and not do. I'll see you in 6 months, sir. And there were so many times in those 6 months that I was like, man, this job, I'm not into it, but can't let David win.
Yeah.
And we ended up having a good relationship because of that. Because I called him 6 months to the day, probably like you with the business card. And I was thinking about it. I got to make it to 6 months so I can call David. And all right, it's been 6 months and here I am still working this job. Let's meet. And then he turned into a great customer. And, I haven't talked to him in a while, but we stayed friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Why were you good at sales?
Tanner, I don't really know.
Why do you think?
My theory, I don't know how accurate that is. At 6'4.5" in high school, next tallest guy was 6'1", and so I was just above everybody in height, and so that just, I guess, made me a leader.
Gave you a presence.
I guess so.
Sure.
Because I turned out to be captain of the football team, captain of the basketball team, captain of the track team, and I think was because that, and I was fiery. I wanted to win.
Yeah.
And
those two things together, stature and competitiveness, take you a long way.
Plus, I'm not bragging again that in basketball, if you're 6'4.5" and everybody else is 6 feet, you have an advantage.
Yeah, definitely.
And I averaged 28 points a game in basketball my senior year.
Okay.
We went to regional my junior and senior year, so then went to state in track and undefeated my junior year in football and lost one game in football my senior year. So, and all of that was leadership because I was the captain, and strange thing happened. I called for a measurement one time in football.
Mm-hmm.
They called it a first down, and I said, "Oh, ref, I want a measurement." He said, "Okay." He measured, and it was like they made it that far. Once he came up, he said, "First game I referee in basketball, Myers, you're fouling out." I thought he was joking. First game he refereed, I fouled out.
He got you. What a vendetta.
Yes.
What a bully.
Yeah. And at that time, I thought, referees, boy, they were it. You couldn't do anything wrong with a referee.
Don't question the ref.
I learned better.
Yeah.
But anyhow, interesting things. But anyhow, I had those two jobs prior to going into the real estate business.
So talk me through that. How do you go from selling drugs and Band-Aids to real estate? That's a pretty big pivot.
Yeah, it is. I decided after I'd been on the road with J&J, because I was out of town 2 weeks out of 5. I was in town 3 weeks, out of town 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, I would come in from wherever I was, like in the valley. I'd come in like on Thursday evening because I had probably 2 sales meetings Friday morning. that I would attend, and I was through the rest of the week. So I needed something to do. I'd worked all my life. When I was in junior high, I mowed somebody's lawn every evening after school, and I worked for this lady in her garden every Saturday all day long. And then I got to high school, worked at a dairy every evening after school, and worked at the filling station Saturday and Sunday. So work is all I had ever known. So I needed something to do that Friday and Saturday and Sunday. So my buddy had just gotten his real estate license, and he said, "Why don't you get your real estate license?" I don't know anything about real estate. He said, "Well, go get your license, and there's courses you'll learn." I said, "Okay." So I applied, and they send you this little booklet that you study. And at that time, if you made a high enough grade on your exam, you had your choice whether you wanted to be a broker or a salesman. Well, I took broker. So now I R1, didn't know whether I was washing or hanging out. So once I got my license, I went to a title company, spent time there with a lady teaching me. At that time, there's only one contract that you wrote, and it was one page. And only 2 type loans. There was a conventional loan and cash. That was it. So, I learned both of those at a title company. And so she taught me how to write those contracts. Then I went to a mortgage company, told me about financing a conventional loan. And so, it wasn't in that day and time, wasn't very much to that business.
Simpler time.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so I worked on the weekend selling VA foreclosures. That's all I sold. I'd come in on a Thursday night and look at the paper on what VA properties were on the market. And I'd go look at 3 or 4 of them. I'd advertise one. In those days, you could call in Friday and your ads in the paper Saturday. So I would put an ad in on one of those, get a call, go show it, sell it, or show them another one or 2, sell one. So I got to where I was selling a house, VA foreclosure, just about every weekend. And I got so busy then that my wife said, "You got to leave town. I'll take the contracts and disperse them where they're supposed to be. So I'll kind of handle the office while you're gone." So that's what we did. And so real estate business is a one-on-one people business. And I knew something about the people business. So I listened to them as really what they were looking for. That's not it. Well, what are you looking for? Let's discuss that a bit. And then we'll discuss financing. And so I'd always have 1 or 2 other homes that I'd show them. And then I had a college friend that knew that I was in the real estate business, and he said, "Have a brother that's working for Neva Humphreys Real Estate, which is a small independent, and he's really unhappy. Won't you go talk to him about coming with you?" Well, at that time, you weren't to solicit. If they wanted to come to work for you, they came and talked to you. You couldn't solicit them. Well, that's all changed now. But anyhow, that's where it was. And I said, "John, I can't do that. That's in violation of the real estate commission." He said, "Well, I'll have Jimmy call you." And I said, "Okay." So Jimmy called, we got together, he came to work for me. And all he and I did was sell foreclosures because he worked for Southwestern Refinery, worked shift work. So when he was off during the day, you know, he looked for something to do.
Yeah.
And so he and then he said, well, you know, I've got a friend out here that's thinking about it. He'd be good. Just get him. So that's how it started. Wound up that I had 5 part-time agents and me part-time. And then my wife, Margie, would handle all the paperwork for all of us. So that's kind of how I got going. And then my boss came to me, Johnson & Johnson boss, came to me and said, Joe, I need to get you out of here. I want to promote you to the Houston market. I said, Fred, I'm going to turn it down. I'm going to tell you why. I'm selling real estate on the side. He said, oh, I knew that. I said, how in the heck do you know that? He said, I knew it. I said, well,
Small
good.
town.
And he said, also, I know you'd never cheat. So I'm not worried about you and your job. Your numbers are still excellent. So I'm not worried about you doing real estate on the side.
What do I care what you do with your free time?
And I said, in a couple of years or less, I'm going to call you and say, Fred, you need to find somebody else because I'm beginning now to know that I'm cheating and that isn't good. And he said, yes, I agree, but that's fine. He said, see if I understand you right. You don't want a raise. You don't want a promotion. You just want to be left alone and let you run that market down there? And I said, yes, sir. He said, GD, I wish I had 12 more just like you, because there was 13 in that division. I wish I had 12 more just like you. I said, well, that's me. I'm not going to change, but when I'm not going to cheat, I'll give you time to find somebody else. Well, when it came time, I called him. I said, Fred, time has come. You need to find somebody. Get them down here. I'll train them, teach them what they need to know about the territory and all, because I need to go full-time in the real estate business because I just feel like, you know, if I stay in town Monday, I'm going to sell another house. If I leave to go to the valley, I'm not gonna.
Right.
So I got to where I'm staying. He said, Joe, I'm not worried about that. I said, I am. He said, okay, I'll find a guy. So that went on for 6 months. Never heard a word from him. I called him again. I said, Fred, how you doing on finding that guy? He said, I'm working on it. I just hadn't found it yet. I said, now I'm hurting down here. I'm telling you, I'm hurting. I'm not doing the things that I know I'm supposed to be doing. He said, all right, Joe, here's your deal. Until I find your replacement, I want you to make 2 calls a month. Southwestern Drug, which is my big drug account, and in HEB, which was 40% of my business. Once a month, call on those guys. You don't need to hand in any reports. Car's still yours. Use it in the real estate business. I don't care what you do. I said, well, now, full salary? Oh, yeah, full salary. I said, well, you know, with a deal like that, I don't care if you ever find anybody.
Yeah.
He laughed and he said, with a deal like that, I'll find somebody.
Yeah.
I said, okay, that's what we're going to do.
How long that last?
Year and a half.
Year and a half. Holy cow.
My last day with Johnson & Johnson was the day Hurricane Celia hit down there. You may not remember Hurricane Celia, but that was August 3rd, 1970. And it was a devastating hurricane. And my replacement came to the house and picked up the car. And I said, let me go through this sample, make sure you got all your samples. And here's your book. And he said, Fred told me not to worry about a thing with you. Get the car and go. that's what I'm going to do. I said, okay.
Deal.
I didn't have to train him. I didn't have to do anything.
What a deal.
But anyhow, that afternoon, the hurricane hit. And we were fortunate. We only lost a fence. But we big losses everywhere. There was, or you remember Woolco stores?
No. Spell that. How do you spell it?
WOLCO.
No.
I lived on Barracuda Street, 3 houses off of Staples Street, which is a highly traveled street in Corpus, and Woolco was across the street on Staples Street.
Okay.
And we were in the bedroom watching the trees blow down and stuff, and I kept seeing this green blowing down the street. What in the world is that? You know, sheets of green. And then finally, the red W came down. Oh my God, that's the Woolco store.
Oh, it was the whole sign blowing down?
Yeah.
Oh no.
That Woolco store exploded inside.
Oh.
And man, it just totaled.
Oh.
Absolutely totaled. Everything.
What was the name of the hurricane?
Pardon?
What was the name of the hurricane?
Hurricane Celia.
Celia.
And we got out of it. Like I say, just lost a fence. That day, the day the hurricane hit, we had 12 contracts working.
Real estate contracts.
2 months later, I had 202 contracts working.
So switching to full-time.
And it just went crazy.
Yeah.
And my guys, I'd come in the mornings, 6 o'clock in the morning. There would be like 7 or 8 contracts on my desk. And I'd go through those, check them, and do all the stuff we're supposed to do. And it's just practically every night, that was happening. I had a guy drive up. We had finally, Margie kicked us out of the house. So I had a small office back behind the Woolco store in the Portdale Plaza, which is the big shopping center.
Okay.
So it was back behind then on the street, Gallagher Street, and parking down the front, sides, and down the back. And we had the corner, and I had a window on the back. And of course, all the windows were broken. And so I had a guy pull up that next day after the hurricane, pull up and said, "You got any houses that I can move into right now?" I said, "Yeah, I've got one. It's a 3-bedroom over on Lincoln Street." And he said, "I'll take it." I said, "Wait a minute. We need to go look at it." "No, we don't. I just settled with the insurance company. I've got my money. Tell me how much it is. And my family and I are going to move in today or tomorrow." I said, "We need to get it closed, so it might take a little longer than that." He said, "You get it closed as quick as you can. I'm moving in." And I sat back and wait a minute, maybe that wasn't such a bad wind that blew, because the government came in with all kinds of loans, $200 down payment. You don't have to have any credit. You could buy a house.
Wow.
Man, we were selling them like hotcakes.
Wow. That was what year? 70, you said?
Yeah, 1970.
1970.
In August of 1970.
So that's really when your real estate practice started in earnest, was in that era, 1970.
Yeah.
When did you retire from it?
5 years ago.
5 years ago.
I waited too long, but it was the same problem I had. All I've ever done is work.
Yeah.
So what would I do if I retired?
What do you do with all your free time?
There's only so much golf I can play.
Right, right. Breakfast to go to on Wednesday. But
Stevie's the one that decided that I was going to retire.
You were voluntold.
We were living in Rockport at the time because I was slowing down some then. I had 8 offices, and then I had
8 offices.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I was selling those offices off so I could slow down some. And then the 3 I kept, of course, was our 3 best offices. And then had an office in Portland, office in Ingleside, and an office in Aransas Pass. And that's the 3 I kept. And Rockport was like 5 miles from Aransas Pass. Anyway, they were very, very close.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to worry as much. So
what was the final impetus for you to say, okay, I'm going to retire now? You remember what that was like? Was it her telling you, hey, you're going to retire? Or
No. I decided, I've had enough.
Do you remember what that moment was like when you finally recognized, like, okay, I'm out? Or was it just sort of a growing sense?
It was growing, I guess, because I don't remember just one day I said, I'm stopping.
Right.
But anyhow, I needed to get the other 3 offices sold then. And so sold 2, which was our best office and then our worst office. Sold those 2 together. And then the second best office, I sold about a month later. So I'm gone then.
Yeah.
Once I sold that office, I'm telling you, I didn't really realize, Tanner, what my old stomach was doing all this time. But with 200 agents, and my job was not to manage the agents. My job was to manage the managers who manage the agents. There's no way I'm gonna keep up with 200.
Sure, yeah.
So I woke up the day after we had finalized our final office. Nobody can sue me. No, I don't have any problems now.
Yeah.
They're all solved. They're somebody else's. I don't know how to act.
Yeah.
That was something, but that was a hard adjustment for me.
That was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You feel like you're settled in now to retirement?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no way I'm going to go back to work.
Yeah, not now anyways.
Yeah. But anyhow, I had a nice long career. I don't regret anything I've done.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
Yeah.
Tell me about your biggest professional victory. Do you have one that stands out? Like the thing you did professionally that you're the most proud of in hindsight? I'm putting you on the spot to think back through all those years. It's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
Even in a short career.
I had I guess the best victory that I ever had was I hired an agent who lived in Aransas Pass, but we didn't have an Aransas Pass office at the time. And she worked out of our Portland office, which was 6 miles away. And finally, she came to me one day and said, Joe, I've told Phyllis, and I want to tell you this the same day. I'm leaving. I'm leaving, and I'm going to work in Aransas Pass. Going to open my own office. Y'all don't have one, but I'm going to partner with another lady that didn't work for me. She said, we're going to open an office in Aransas Pass. I said, okay, I understand. And she said, and we'll be friends forever, Joe. I said, okay, we won't be enemies.
Yeah.
Because that's a competitive business.
Sure.
And she said, we won't be any enemies because I'm not going to get out of Aransas Pass. I said, okay, that's fine. About 3 years later, she called me one day, said, Joe Myers, get over to my office. I want to talk to you. I said, oh my God, who did it to you, Mary? Because I figured some agent had done something. She said, nobody did it to me. I'm going to talk to you. You're going to buy my office. I said, Mary, I don't want an office in Aransas Pass. She said, get over here. You're going to buy my office. I said, oh, and that's the way she was. I mean, she was, but nice as she could be. Yeah. That's just how she was. Yeah. And so I went over there And she said, we're going to sell this building. We're going to owner finance 100% of it. That building had 5 apartments and then a real estate office. And she said, here's what we want for the building. I said, tell me about the tenant. Tell me about the tenants. Well, tenants were bringing in, more than the payments. And she laughed. She said, I told you, you're going to buy this office.
Yeah, yeah.
I said, man,
she saw
you're
you
making
coming.
it hard to turn down. And she said, well, we're going to sell the real estate office with the agents, including me, not my partner. She's retiring, but with me. I said, well, give me a list of your agents. Tell me what they're doing volume-wise. Or was the star of that office, and I knew that. She didn't really manage. She just, anyhow, I bought that office, 500 down, and we were making that, we just started right off as a profit.
Yeah.
So
that's a victory because she left and
then came back, and she wouldn't have it
circle.
any other way. She said, I will not sell this office to anybody but Joe Myers.
That's cool.
I said, well, that's great. Yeah, I'll buy it. You've made it where I can't turn it down.
I like that.
She said, I told you.
That's a good story. All right, so we're over an hour in. So
my goodness.
This will be your last question. I told you it goes by fast.
It did, didn't it?
It's been painless thus far. Strap in for your last question. I got a good one.
Okay.
No, you are in your 88th year. If you could go back to your 38th year, so picture for a second you're 38, 39, and you could tell yourself of that age something that would be useful to him in his life, what would you tell yourself with that much hindsight? Or would you not tell that person anything because you wouldn't want to influence the decisions that he's going to make?
Well, I'd tell that person you'd be nice to everybody. You don't ever know what's going to happen in future years. And that, I guess, would be the advice. Just be honest and fair with everybody.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do.
So then it probably had less to do with your height.
Oh, yeah.
Why you were so successful in what you did.
I don't think so. In real estate, no.
Yeah.
It may have had something to do with Swift and Company or with Johnson & Johnson. But I don't think so in real estate.
But your success had to do with the fact that you took care of people, is my point.
Right.
Yeah.
And the success, I wouldn't ask them to do anything that I wouldn't do or hadn't done.
Yeah, sure.
So
that'll do it too.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Joe, I appreciate you being willing to come in and talk without a script. I didn't give you any questions to pre-wire you.
You did good. I probably got off on a tangent too much.
I like tangents because it doesn't require anything of me. You had an advantage in that you got to see both Jims come in before you and kind of know what the format was like.
I got to see, I didn't get to see Jim Withers.
You haven't seen Jim Withers?
No, have not. I did get to see all of
Jim Bergner's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought he did a very good job.
Yeah, he did do a good job. Well, that's what I would conclude with, is just to say that I appreciate the friendship, as unlikely as that it would be, but the frequency of our visits where we get to sit and have breakfast once a week, it's been important to me trying to get my footing in Bastrop County, because when you're moving into a place where you don't know anybody,
right,
any relationship that you can see somebody consistently is valuable. It's like a thing that I've been able to look forward to. So I've appreciated getting to know you.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Same here. You are the baby of the group.
I am the baby of the group, the grandbaby of the group.
I went through the same thing when I moved here. I didn't know anybody.
Why'd you move here in the first place? I guess that'll be the final question. Why did you move here from?
We moved to Bastrop because I refused to live in Austin. Stevie wanted to live in Austin. That's where the grandbaby was.
Ah, grandbabies.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's why we moved here. So I said, no, I won't. I'm not going to live in Austin. I'm not a big town guy. She said, well, I'm not either, but I want to be close to Henry. I said, no, I'm not. I won't live in Austin. You got to find some place around Austin. So we went up and we looked up north. Wasn't what I was looking for. She found this place. I don't remember how she found it. She got to where she'd come up and look, and I'd stay home. And she called me. She said, I think I found the place. I said, okay, tell me about it. She said, it's in Bastrop. You know where that is? I said, well, I know it's kind of east of Austin, 30 miles or so. She said, well, not that far, but yes. And she said, it's a place that's on the golf course. She knew I'd like that. It's on the right side of the golf course. Both times that I've looked at it, there was golf balls in the yard. See, that's one thing. I love finding golf balls.
Okay.
That's my vice, finding golf balls.
But
anyhow, and she said, it's a 3-bedroom, a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, double garage. The garage is not as big as we're used to. We're used to triple garages. So she said, I need you to get up here and look at it. I said, well, if that's really what you think you want, put it under contract, subject to me looking at it. She said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it right now. I said, okay. So she did. She said, it's under contract. Get up here tomorrow. So I came up and looked and went outside, and there was 4 or 5 golf balls in the yard. I said, sold. She said, do you want to look at the rest of the house? No, I'm fine.
The golf balls in the yard got you.
Well,
so then who's the better salesperson?
She is.
Yeah, she is.
But I've got a huge picture window, my desk, and I look out that picture window. I'm looking out our backyard, the golf course, and then trees. And of course, we didn't have big trees in South Texas. So, that all was of interest to me. And I had seen that, then went outside and saw that. And I said, yeah, we'll take it. That
was the deal.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So
well, I'm glad you made it here. I'm glad for the friendship and the frequency that we get to see each other.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you being willing to do this once again.
Yeah. What do you plan to do with this? That's my curiosity.
This?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to do anything other than what it's already doing. I bring people in and visit with them because I enjoy doing it. And the time goes by quickly. And when I leave here, I enjoy having done it.
Yeah.
I always learn something. And it doesn't have to be anything other than that. I'm fine with it just being that.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And you're right. Time flew by.
Quick. It's a quick hour.
Said, how long have we been doing this? I said, 30 minutes, I guess.
That was an hour and almost 20 minutes. It goes by quick when you're just visiting with a buddy.
Okay.
There's a clock.
Have a darn, yeah.
Well, thanks again, Joe. I do appreciate it.
Okay. I'll get out of your hair.